This is David Barton. He's a right-wing scumbag shill, basically. You may not know this, but after some pretty heavy research, I discovered that this guy is the head, or at least was, the head of, I believe, the largest Trump super PAC. He actually started a super PAC for Ted Cruz in 2016. When Ted Cruz dropped out, it went to Donald Trump, and he headed up that super PAC ever since. He claims to be a constitutional scholar. He's not. He has like a bachelor's degree from some Christian university on Christian counseling or some stupid shit. I don't even remember now. But anyway, he runs this podcast with his son, Tim Barton. Yes, this is David Barton. His son is Tim Barton. And he had Rick Green on, and they just said some psychotic stuff about Alex Prede, who was the dude who was filming ICE. A woman gets pushed down. He goes over to help her up. ICE people walk over, push him to the ground, take the gun that he had, and then execute him in the streets after taking his gun, which wasn't even drawn. He wasn't even like holding it. Now, David Barton is this big Second Amendment person who says people should be allowed to own nuclear weapons. Yes, he said that. They should be allowed to own nuclear fucking weapons. And suddenly, just like that, he's an anti-Second Amendment person. The moment that somebody has a gun that he doesn't fucking like, now he's anti-Second Amendment. He did this like whole podcast episode or whatever on how I guess the Second Amendment is bad now or whatever. I wanted to give it a listen. But just so you have some context for who he is, let me play that nuclear weapon thing.
The greatest people killer of all has been government. Nothing has killed more people than government has killed. And so when you look at that, the Founding Fathers believed that the people should be able to have enough arms in place to be able to remind their government, you don't want to mess with us. You don't want to come after us. Well, if all we've got is pea shooters and they've got 50 caliber machine guns, that's not the point of the First Amendment, because they point out consistently, Patrick Henry and George Mason and others, that the greatest threat to your loss of guns will come from government, not from criminals or others. And so they were very adamant that you be able to have that, which is why we see in Boston, they didn't care if you have a cannon. You can have a cannon, but please don't shoot it in town or within a mile of town. It's just so loud. I mean, it wasn't the fact of having a cannon. It was just, it's a little loud just to be shooting off just for fun. So in the same way, I don't want to see my neighbor stockpile nuclear bombs. Yeah, I don't want to see it, but I don't care if he has one, because he should have the same rights. But you're saying, well, I don't think private citizens should have nuclear weapons. But if you've been trained with responsibility and morality and the concept of when and where you use them, the Founding Fathers are trained extensively in the concept of defensive warfare. You don't start anything. Now, if somebody else starts it, you can take it on, but you don't start it. I don't care if my neighbor has a nuclear weapon as long as he has that defensive concept that he will never use that unless it's being used against him.
Hey, dumb, that's the fucking point. You don't know who's going to have this concept of quote unquote defensive blah, 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 whatever. Really what he's saying with that clip is if you're a Christian, you're trustworthy. So Christians should be allowed to own nuclear weapons because they are trustworthy by default. Now, you can point out, like, there are a ton of priests who've taken advantage of kids. Now, how do you answer for that? And he would say, they're not true Christians. That's the fucking point, okay? Anyway, so David Barton thinks that people should have nuclear weapons because they should be able to take on a tyrannical government. Isn't it interesting how these people who stockpile weapons aren't taking on a tyrannical government? Huh. And this whole time, they've been saying, you're going to be thanking us for all those dead kids in schools once the government turns tyrannical. So not only do we have a bunch of dead kids in schools, but we also have nobody to fight against a tyrannical government. Fantastic. Because it was never about that, obviously. Now, I've talked about this at length. I'm not going to get into it again, but guerrilla warfare or civil war or whatever are not going to work. They're not going to work in our situation. In some situations, they might, not in this one. The reason guerrilla warfare would work in any other situation is because it demoralizes the enemy and makes them feel like they can't administrate properly because nobody is listening to them. There's chaos. There's no way to handle the situation. And we can do that without guerrilla warfare. And in fact, we are. We are winning right now in this political war that we're fighting. We just have to keep it up. We have to keep raising political awareness. We have to keep voting. We have to keep protesting and fighting any way we possibly can, but violence isn't actually the answer in this situation. Again, in some it is, but not now. Not here, not in the US. Anyway, I wanted to listen to this David Barton video where he talks about the Alex Prede stuff. This is an article on the video that I want to listen to in a second. The Second Amendment absolutists at wall builders suddenly find an exception after the latest ICE shooting. For years, the trio of Christian nationalist pseudo-historians at wall builders have been radical Second Amendment absolutists, with founder David Barton asserting over and over again that the Constitution protects not just an individual right to own guns, but that this places absolutely no limitation on an individual's rights to own whatever you can get your hands on, including tanks, fighter jets, and even nuclear weapons. We need this ability to protect and defend ourselves against the government, said Barton's son, Tim, in 2018. We wanted to make sure the people had the same means of defense as a government might have offensive weapons. So we need the same level of weapons to defend ourselves as we're going to be attacked with, because, God, this dude speaks like an idiot. Going to be attacked with because we didn't want to disadvantage the people from being able to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. Again, that's just not how it works. Like, we have a billion examples, especially after the Soviet Union fell. Dictatorships crumbled and turned into democracies and then backslid into dictatorships again, back and forth. And this just is not, like, this is just imaginary. Like, his perception of the world is not how anything actually works or how it actually plays out in real life. The entire premise of Green's course is that all Americans should be carrying weapons everywhere at all times and be trained and prepared to protect themselves and others, especially from the tyranny of the government. Interesting. Trained, you say? Well, why don't they, like, back up a mandatory training course to get a gun, like a licensing program then? If they want people trained, you'd think that they'd stand for a licensing program. Given such views, one could expect that Rick Green and the Bartons would be outraged by the killing of Alex Prede by ICE agents in Minneapolis over the weekend. Prede, who was filming ICE agents during an operation, was legally carrying a weapon in a holster when he was confronted by multiple ICE agents who shoved him to the ground and attempted to subdue him. During the scrum, one agent removed Prede's weapon just seconds before another agent fired multiple shots into Prede's back, killing him. On their radio program today, Green and the Bartons blamed Prede for his own death. So let's give this a listen and see what they had to say for themselves.
Really? We're just returning to what made the country great in the first place. This is not new stuff. We're just getting back to the good stuff that made America great in the first place.
Yeah, and I think, guys, especially with some of the unfoldings and happenings over the weekend, when we think about...
I'm assuming he's talking about Prede.
All of what's going on in Minnesota, and you know, another person that tried to interfere with a legal operation. That person was armed.
Who's not interfering. He was filming and protesting. That's different.
Of course, the police engaged, discharged their weapons. The person was killed. And social media has kind of melted in many ways, with a lot of people going, oh my gosh, you know, how could this, you know, America, this nation, and we have no morals, and we're Christians, you know, why aren't we crying out to this, et cetera, et cetera. I thought this is such a great point of why we have to move back to restoring that moral foundation.
And what they mean by that is turn it into a Christian nationalist state.
Because what the founding fathers explained and understood from the beginning, when John Adams has the famous quote from that letter to the militia of Massachusetts.
Okay, John Adams was a complete piece of shit. He was f***ing awful, and he was pretty much the only Christian nationalist nutcase among the founding fathers. And that's why they constantly bring out this same quote over and over again. Basically, he said, this Constitution won't work for anybody unless they're Christian, which is nonsense. The Constitution was intentionally, specifically written for people who are not Christian to be able to live their lives the way that they want to live their lives. It's intentionally written to govern people of diverse backgrounds. And John Adams actually tried to put religious into the Constitution, and they continued like wrinkling it up and throwing it away and starting over because they didn't want religious in the Constitution. So pretty much the only thing that these people have to back up their belief is this one John Adams quote.
where he says that our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other, as he explains.
Which is like nonsense. Like, that doesn't make any sense in the context of the Constitution.
America will only remain and function as long as we have the morals that allow us to function as free members of a society.
Well, he was wrong.
Once we lose that moral foundation that allows us to function, we will no longer be able to operate the way that the founding fathers envisioned, et cetera, which, kind of a side note on that, it also reminds me of in the midst of the revolution when John Adams wrote Abigail, as he was just...
Oh, she was a fucking nutcase too, his wife.
Traveling like crazy, the sacrifices that he was making, not being with his family all the time on board ships or in meetings. And he writes back and is a little bit reminiscing, frustrated, not sure that people are fully appreciating the sacrifices being made. And this is when he kind of quips to Abigail that what he wants to tell people is, posterity, you will never know how much it cost my generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you make good use of it, or I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half the means to Dad, do you remember how the quote finishes? That I ever took half the means to preserve it, defend it, something. I'm saying it from memory, so I could look it up. And
I assume this is Tim Barton. I guess his dad doesn't know the rest of the quote. Is it even a real quote? I'm tempted to say no. Like, these people are not real constitutional scholars. They pretend to be. They have no education in this field. They've done nothing but distort the reality of it.
And quote the whole thing. It's enough for people to go find it. But the fact that he is acknowledging the incredible sacrifice, and if we don't make good use of it, we're going to lose it. And what allows us to preserve it is that religious moral foundation. As we are seeing all the things that go on, guys, it reiterates in my mind the dire necessity, as we are seeing places, and we should celebrate, and we are, when in Fort Worth, the one of the top 20 largest cities in the U.S., and actually the only one that is conservative of those top major cities, and they do an unveiling of the Ten Commandments. I got to be there and give a little speech for it as they're opening it. I mean, super cool. I love being a part of it. But this is what we have to restore, or we will not be able to endure and function as a free society.
Okay, that was a long-winded way of saying we have to be Christian, and we're not Christian as a society, and that's why people are dying, because Alex Prede wasn't a Christian. I mean, just delusion. Like, they have no fucking clue if that's true. He wasn't a Christian, so he was out there protesting ICE, because a real Christian would join ICE, you see.
Yeah, in fact, that quote, Tim, I can't remember how it ends either, but that is my wife, Kara. I think that's her favorite founding father quote. It is such a challenge to it, and we need to recognize that. And if we don't study these things, we won't know. I got to say something about Wall Builders and the radio program, and I hope this fits into the, not to think more highly of yourself than you ought, but to think soberly. And I don't think this is thinking more highly of us. I think it's thinking soberly. I think we do a pretty good job of being intellectually honest and being consistent. And you mentioned this thing in Minneapolis. We have always said, whether it was the BLM riots of 2020, whether it was January 6th at the Capitol, whether it was these things in Minneapolis, wherever it is, we have always consistently said, you don't fight law enforcement. You don't go in and...
Really? You said that for January 6th? Okay. Come on, dude. Give it a fucking rest. He supported the January 6th people to the death, dude. And Donald Trump ran on pardoning the January 6th, the violent rioters. And they still voted for his ass. I don't want to hear it. Give it a fucking rest, bro. And this wasn't a riot, by the way. Alex Prede was simply trying to help a woman stand up who had been pushed by ICE. That's what he was doing when he was shot in the fucking back.
Physically be violent with law enforcement. That you are asking for trouble. You don't resist arrest. You don't climb.
He didn't. He helped a woman up. They came up behind him and knocked him down, pinned him to the ground, grabbed his gun, and shot him in the fucking back. He didn't do any of that. What are these people smoking? They have to rewrite the story to continue to maintain their existing beliefs. They cannot maintain their beliefs while believing in reality simultaneously.
Through a broken window, that's the last line of defense for police officers defending members of Congress from what was literally on that side of the Capitol, a mob. You don't take a gun into a protest situation like this where you could end up in a scuffle with...
Don't fucking tell me where I can take my gun. What happened to all that shit about the Second Amendment, having guns and shit everywhere, anywhere we want to have them? What happened to all that? What happened to all that Second Amendment absolutism? Suddenly evaporates right into the fucking ether when it's inconvenient for them. They don't have principles. There are no principles in this entire podcast. Their principle is, I will support Donald Trump to the bitter end no matter what. And you keep on doing that. It's not going to end well in the denazification process, in the transitional justice process for people like that.
With police officers. So, I think, Tim, it's because of what you said that we can be intellectually honest and consistent in this. It's not based on our emotions or who the player is in that situation.
Now they're pretending to be some kind of moral arbiter, some adjudicator who's, honest as they come, principled and all of that. Why are you even putting on this ridiculous act? Like anybody believes this about them. Robert Heinlein coined the phrase, an armed society is a polite society, but he meant it's satire. We are at a point now where satire is indistinguishable from reality, unfortunately.
By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there.
President who's protesting, or who the player is in that situation, who's president, who's protesting or not protesting. It's based on the principles. And I just want to point that out because I can't say that about even some of our conservative friends. They sometimes they take the position based on who the players are, whereas we take the position, we try to, and I think, again, we're pretty consistent in this.
Pretending to have principles still. Give it a fucking rest.
We take the position based on what the principles are.
Hey, by the way, I went back and looked up John Adams just so that we're not making it up, but he says, this is April 26, 1777 to Abigail. He said, posterity, you'll never know how much it cost the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you'll make good use of it. If you do not, I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half the pains to preserve it.
Yeah, and David Barton and Tim Barton and Rick Green are all three completely erasing everything that the Founding Fathers tried to do, intentionally setting out to, reverse the hard work that they put in to make this a not free society anymore. That's their goal. I'm not saying that's where we are. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to erase people's freedoms. David Barton is heavily involved in the Project 2025 stuff as well. Do you know that we are 51% of the way through Project 2025? They've accomplished 51% of their goals. Do you know that one of the goals in Project 2025 is forcing everybody to attend church every week? Seriously, that's in the fucking list.
So that was his statement, is don't make me regret this. And Rick, picking up with where you are, this guy that got shot and all about him being the victim. Look, when it turns out you don't have any ID on you and you came in with multiple magazines, don't tell me you're a peaceful protester.
Dude, I love how they have completely turned on Alex Prede or on the Second Amendment, quote unquote. Suddenly, it's not okay to have a gun in all circumstances. This guy who wants people to own nuclear weapons and tanks and fighter jets, suddenly it's not okay to have a gun in any situation. This is them erasing their principles. They literally did this whole thing leading up to this conversation about how principled they are. And then they erase all of that.
In a court of law, that establishes intent right there. You have no ID. You leave that away so you can't be ID'd, and you carry multiple magazines. Not good.
What the f*** do you mean not good? That's his right.
Well, and this is one of the things, too, that people might argue, well, but if he had a concealed carry permit,
So he says, time to go play hooky from church then. Yeah, well, realistically, how it would probably play out is they would force you to pay tithes to be a member of a church, and they would define which churches were okay. That's a big step beyond where society is right now, what they would be okay with. But that is in the list of goals. They're trying to move us toward that, the Heritage Foundation specifically, and people like David Barton. That's not going to happen. But they're trying to get us there, is the point. 10% of your income now goes to churches.
guys, and this is, not to give away too much information, but obviously all three of us talk openly about the fact we conceal carry all the time. It's going to be very unusual you find us without having a handgun on us. And Rick, I know for you and me, often we'll carry multiple magazines. and pocket knife, sometimes a tourniquet. Like, I mean, we carry different things, so it's not crazy that somebody might have a firearm and have multiple magazines.
Yeah, no fucking.
However, when law enforcement is doing an operation and then you go to intervene, as you would call it, or interfere, as they would acknowledge.
No, nobody was interfering or intervening with anything. He walked over to help somebody stand up, and they pinned him down and shot him in the back. He was not interfering or intervening with anything. He had a camera out. That's it.
And then you put hands on an officer?
He didn't do that. My God, dude.
When you put hands on law enforcement and you are carrying a firearm, they are carrying a firearm, there's a scuffle that goes to the ground. And because of scuffle, we don't yet have all the information. We haven't.
No, we haven't. Are you fucking kidding me? We have video from multiple angles. There's no scuffle. He didn't put his hands on an officer. He's acting like he punched an officer in the face and then tried to like knee him in the stomach when he was keeled over and all the. It's all nonsense. This didn't happen. The dude was filming, walked over to help somebody up that they had pushed down, and they put a bunch of like 10 bullets in his back. We all saw the video. Okay, I'm not going to play it because it's violent and graphic, but we all saw it. Okay, we all know what happened. They took his gun from him and then unloaded into his back. It's wild that these people are so unprincipled that they can brazenly, flagrantly lie to their listeners' faces like this and expect them to believe it.
Seen it all, so we don't know if in the wrestling they saw like shirt lifted, they see the gun, or if he actually reached for the gun. We don't know.
No, we do know. He did not reach for the gun. We know this for a fact. I cannot believe these people have so few principles.
No, we know somebody yells gun. We know they discharge their firearms, and we know he goes to stand before Jesus. Like that's what we know. But the bottom line is, even if you are legally carrying, when you put your hands on an officer and it goes to the ground, at that point, you've already messed up so many ways that
he didn't put his hands on an officer. This is just made up.
Maybe to your point, if you're showing up without ID, it could be because you have intention and motive beyond what maybe the liberal media is pretending like he did. But even if you were an innocent bystander, you don't intervene and put hands on an officer and you go to the ground where there's a firearm and there's multiple officers telling you to stop resisting and you continue to resist.
What are you talking about? Continue to resist. Did he see the video? He must have seen the video, right?
Like,
yeah,
I understand the drama surrounding it. I do, but I think there's a lot of people being led by their emotions and not by fact. And the reality.
Yeah. Listen to this dude. Led by emotions, not fact. Are you fucking serious right now? You cannot be real. You think you are laying down facts for us?
I think there's a lot of people being led by their emotions and not by fact. And the reality of the situation that is far more significant, and not to derail on this too much, because really we should go talk to Matt. And here's
a hot topic, and it's a hot topic, and we need biblical, historical, constitutional perspective on it.
And the hot topic is we're going to cover the 10 Commandments in Texas, being in Fort Worth at Tarrant County Courthouse, but the 10 Commandments also need to be in Minnesota really bad.
Oh, that's the problem. See, Alex Prede was shot in the fucking back 10 times because we don't have 10 Commandments posters in every classroom.
And when your populace is defending lawbreakers against the law keepers, and you're going to defend illegal aliens, and by the way, the illegal aliens that are being arrested in Minnesota are the ones that have criminal records.
No, they're not. First of all. Second, they're human beings, okay? I don't give a fuck if they have criminal records. They're human beings. They don't deserve this. This is fucking evil. And you catch his framing there, the lawbreakers versus the law keepers. By definition, protesters are lawbreakers in his mind. And by definition, Trump's Gestapo is the law keeper.
So you're not only defending illegal aliens, you're defending the ones with criminal records. You need the 10 Commandments up there with all Somalia stuff as well.
Okay, first of all, I'm not sure why we give a fuck about the 10 Commandments. Jesus fulfilled the old law. I have no reason to follow the 10 Commandments or the other 603 commandments. They're all grouped together. There's not like a difference between them. No eating shellfish or pork, no wearing cotton and linen blends. It's all in there together with no lying, with no worshiping other gods before me, no graven images. It's all the same shit. And Jesus fulfilled it. We don't need to follow that shit anymore. Christians follow the two new laws. Love your neighbor as yourself, and love God with your whole heart, soul, mind, body, and strength. And for the record, if we're talking about Old Testament, I think that we should take a look at Leviticus 19:33. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. Deuteronomy 10:18-19. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And you are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. Exodus 22:21. Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt. Exodus 23:9. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. Deuteronomy 27:19. Cursed is anyone who withholds justice from the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow. Zechariah 7:10. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner, or the poor. Matthew 25:35-40. This is Jesus speaking. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Romans 12:13, share with the Lord's people who are in need, practice hospitality. 1 Peter 4:9, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Ephesians 2:19, consequently you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people, and also members of his household. Luke 10:25, the parable of the Good Samaritan is also relevant. Jesus explicitly makes the hero of the story a Samaritan, a despised ethnic or religious outsider to his Jewish audience, who shows mercy to a stranger and then tells his listeners to go and do likewise. So tell me more about how they're foreigners and they're worth less as a result. They shouldn't be treated like everybody else because they're foreigners, because they're immigrants. One more time.
And you're going to defend illegal aliens. And by the way, the illegal aliens that are being arrested in Minnesota are the ones that have criminal records. So you're not only defending illegal aliens, you're defending the ones with criminal records. You need the 10 Commandments up there with all Somalia stuff as well.
Like, I know that people are legally allowed to call themselves Christians and scholars, even when they're not following those disciplines, even when they're not, like, even reading the fucking Bible. But this is egregious, dude. He needs to have his Christian card taken from him until he earns it back with a test or something.
Well, literally they need 10 Commandments because, yeah, so many of these people, they are stealing, they are murdering, they are.
Notice he says so many of these people. I don't give a fuck what some of them are doing. Yeah, okay, put them in jail. Great, yes, put them in jail. Now, what about the ones who are not doing any of that? What about the ones who are just foreigners in the land?
Yeah, so many of these people, they are stealing, they are murdering, they are raping, like literally things the 10 Commandments would give guidance on. So apparently there's many people that have forgotten what basic moral values are, what we should be upholding and defending. But fortunately, guys, the good news is in Fort Worth, out in front of the city hall, there is a massive stone, or maybe it's granite monument of the 10 Commandments now on display to help just remind people this is the foundation of law in Western civilization, the Western Hemisphere, and specifically the foundation of law in America.
Like, what do they even think they're accomplishing by putting the 10 Commandments up? The first 4 don't apply to us in the United States in any way, shape, or form. They don't even apply to them because they're Jewish laws, not Christian laws. I don't have to keep the Sabbath day. I'm allowed to make graven images. You're literally making a graven image out of the fucking 10 Commandments. And the first commandment contradicts the First Amendment. You can't have both. You shall have no other gods before me versus you can worship any god you want or none at all. These people are so out of their heads, lost.
I just created a new website, firesidewatch.com. You can watch videos with friends, and everybody can play or pause the video. I made it so I could collaborate with other YouTubers, but I figured I might as well make it available to everybody. On top of that, you can add videos to the queue, upvote them, and sort by most upvoted. Give it a look, firesidewatch.com. And while you're at it, check out my Patreon, owenmorgan.com/Patreon. You can follow me there for free.
Yeah, well, as we're going to break here, just to put that whole thing in context, I think it was Mark Driscoll, some pastor I saw online last night, saying when you call good evil and evil good, this is evil stuff. And they're literally...
Yes, oh my God, exactly. I mean, Mark Driscoll is on the wrong side of history, but he was correct here without even realizing it, probably.
Really trying to deport the worst of the worst. The ones with, like you're saying, some of these are rapists and pedophiles and other...
Some of them, yes. And if that's the case, put them in prison. If they've paid their debt to society, why are you f***ing with them? We all have the right to live our lives the way we want as long as we pay restitution and we're not a danger to society. These people, assuming they're not in prison because they picked them up off the street, have paid their debt to society. Why are you harassing any of these people if they even have a debt to society? I'm just going to try to figure out how many people who have been detained by ICE have criminal records. I don't even know if we have those stats. Probably not, because ICE is not a transparent organization. They don't report on like anything. Here you go. Nearly 3 in 4, 73%, had no criminal conviction. Nearly half had no criminal conviction or even any pending criminal charges. Only 8% had a violent or property crime conviction. Only 5% had a violent criminal conviction. 48,377 out of 65,735, or 73%, held in ICE detention have no criminal conviction, according to data according to data as recent as November 30th. So this is a couple months old. Many of those convicted committed only minor offenses, including traffic violations. 92% of ICE detention growth in fiscal year 2026 has been driven by immigrants with no criminal convictions. So this is just a flat-out, blatant, bald-faced fucking lie. Again.
Criminal acts, in addition to the criminal act of coming here illegally. They've got other criminal acts, so no doubt about it.
He's a lawyer, by the way, so he should know that coming over the border or overstaying a visa or whatever is not a criminal act. It's a civil matter, like a traffic ticket.
I'm with you, Tim. No doubt we carry all kinds of places, but I remember right before the election, I was speaking at an event that J.D. Vance was going to be speaking at as well, and so I did not carry my weapon into that arena because I didn't want to be in a situation where Secret Service. He already had Secret Service protection because it was late in the campaign. I just didn't want to, just in case something happened, right? Just that one more thing, and that was the event where I got pulled over on my way back to the airport. And literally in the middle of the highway, they shut down the highway, and I got handcuffed and face down in the middle of the highway.
Holy shit, what's all this?
Went through this whole thing, and I did everything the officers told me to do, and thankfully my gun was still in my safe in the car.
Well, not for nothing, but, I don't think people should be, I don't think that people should go through a deadly game of Simon Says. Like, if I fuck up, I have OCD, and with OCD comes intrusive thoughts. Like, what if I just stood up and ran right now? I'm not going to do that. And people who have that don't do that very often. But, what if I stand up, or I have an itch, or I twitch or something, and the cop gets all freaked out and they pull the trigger? It's a deadly game of Simon Says. That's fucking scary. Needlessly. Doesn't need to be. Why are cops so ready to pull out a gun? You shouldn't have to go through this. Most societies in Scandinavian countries, they don't deal with this shit.
Bottom line is my rental car was used in a murder the day before.
Holy shit. That's crazy.
And they returned it to Avis, and I ended up being pulled over in the middle. I mean, it was a crazy situation. And the only reason I didn't end up with extra holes in my body and dead is because I listened to every command of those officers and followed. And by the time I was all set,
it doesn't matter. You can listen to the commands, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Alex Prede didn't do anything to deserve being shot. And even if he wasn't following commands, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be executed for not listening to a cop, for being belligerent or whatever, or simply carrying a gun. You shouldn't be shot for simply carrying a gun. For nothing else.
Said and done. Thankfully, one of the officers at the back, he goes, I was wearing all this 511 gear, and he was like, "What do you do?" I had my little tactical flashlight and all this. And he's like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, honestly, we train guys like you." And then we
don't fucking tell me that.
Started talking about biblical citizenship and Constitution classes. He says, "Have you ever heard of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills?"
No, he was a Jack Hibbs fucking nutcase.
Said, yeah, Jack Hibbs is a friend of ours. He's in our biblical citizenship class. And he goes, well, I just trained all their security officers. So thankfully, ended up with a friend. And by the time it was over, we said we should make a video on the fact that y'all did everything right. No confusing commands, because this was a SWAT team that took me down. And they said, you did everything right by obeying everything. And we said, yeah, no accident, because we followed the law and we followed what the officer said. Anyway.
One of the most important things about this is one person should be issuing commands. You can't have multiple people doing it, because if they issue conflicting commands, then everything gets confused and it turns into a huge mess. And, that's how you get shot. But ICE agents aren't trained to do that. They don't know how to do that. They have no clue. They didn't go through all of this. They don't have years of experience on the force. They're going around pushing people down, harassing them, hurting them, and shooting them in the fucking face.
I just give that example to say, be smart about where you carry. Sometimes there's times when you just choose not to because of a situation like this. And definitely if you get pulled over, don't be, chip on your shoulder. Don't be smarting off. Don't be, that's a time to obey all those commands, hands on the steering wheel.
Oh my God. Anti-government activist who says he's stockpiling weapons for the event that a tyrannical government takes over says, obey the law, obey authorities, don't have a chip on you. Should just be the super nicest guy on planet Earth when authorities are around. Tread on me harder.
Goes down, light on in your car. That's just smart. And this guy was not smart about what he did. Okay.
What did he do? Alex Prede, what did he do? What did he do wrong in your mind? He did nothing wrong. Okay? At no point did he draw the gun. No point did he resist. They just dogpiled him and then shot him in the fucking back. He did nothing wrong. Nothing.
I know we're nearly out of time. We got to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll have Matt Cross with us. Stay with us, folks. You're listening to The Wall.
Absolutely insane, dude. These people are fucking broken inside. How do they not see that they are the bad guys? How do they not realize this? Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. It's insane. These people are insane.